I saw millions of souls screaming, but they weren't in hell, they were still alive, walking among us, smiling on Facebook, dancing on TikTok, preaching from pulpits, and yet in the spirit realm they were prisoners, chained, gagged, their eyes sewn shut by lies. This isn't a metaphor. I saw it. I didn't believe in these things before. I was a doctor, a surgeon trained in facts, flesh, bone, and blood. I used to say, faith helps the poor, science saves lives. But I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong. My name is Enzo de la Cruz. I was born in Davao, the second son of a church elder and a Sunday school teacher. I grew up memorizing verses, but somewhere between scholarships and surgeries, I lost my hunger for God. I didn't turn away intentionally, I just drifted. Until I couldn't even hear him anymore. Until the only voice I trusted was my own. In March this year, I was stationed in Aleppo, Syria, assisting a relief operation with Médecins Sans Frontières. Bombs fell at a distance daily. Children came in with missing limbs, mothers screaming. We worked 18 hours a day, non-stop, until the day that changed my eternity. March 19th. I was performing a surgery on a boy named Hassan. Shrapnel had pierced his liver. Halfway through the operation, I felt this unbearable pressure in my chest. I couldn't breathe. The lights above me turned into shadows, and then darkness. But not the darkness of sleep. It was like falling into a vacuum. Silence, then screams. My spirit was lifted, pulled upward, then sideways, into what I can only describe as a plane between heaven and earth. And in this realm, I was made to see what I had ignored all my life, the truth behind the visible world. I saw a city. It looked like Manila, but it wasn't Manila. There were no cars, no sound, no people, only shadows. Thousands of them. I tried to talk to them, but they didn't notice me. Their mouths moved, but no voice came out. And then I saw children, hundreds bound with cords made of smoke, their eyes glued to black screens, their hands moving, dancing, scrolling, but their souls lifeless, pale, hollow. Then the voice came, not loud, not angry, but deeper than thunder, gentler than breath.
My child, do you see what they do not see? They think they are free, but they are already enslaved.
I collapsed, not in fear, but in grief. I had been one of them, a man who thought knowledge made him immune to deception, a man who thought fasting was for monks, that demons were for the movies, that spiritual warfare was just drama for the desperate. But now, standing in this terrifying stillness, I knew the truth, and the truth burned like fire in my bones. Then I heard something even more chilling. Laughter. Demonic, mocking, joyous laughter. I turned and saw figures twisted, formless, watching churches, families, influencers. They weren't attacking. No, they were resting, relaxed. Because we had made their work easy. We fed ourselves with their poisons and called it entertainment. We mocked holiness and called it freedom. We numbed our conscience and called it self-care. One of them, a particularly large spirit with scales like oil and smoke, turned its eyes toward me and whispered, "He's seen too much." And in that moment, I felt an invisible chain lock around my throat. I couldn't breathe again. I cried out, but not with words, just desperation. And again, he answered,
Do not fear, Enzo. You are not dead. You are being awakened. I have allowed you to see, so you may speak.
He allowed me to return. But before I was sent back, I was shown what demons fear the most. It wasn't fancy churches, not social media sermons, not million-view testimonies. It was fasting. But not just skipping meals. No, it was a kind of fasting that destroys systems built by darkness over decades. Fasting that opens the eyes. Fasting that burns the roots of generational bondage. Fasting that makes hell panic. In the next moments, The Lord took me through 4 spiritual battlefields, each one revealing a type of fasting that makes the kingdom of darkness scream. This is not theology. This is not theory. This is war. And it begins when a believer stops feeding the flesh and starts feeding the fire of the Spirit. Let me tell you what I saw. The first battlefield the Lord took me to looked nothing like war. It looked like a small, dimly lit nipa hut in the province. I saw a frail woman, probably 70 years old, kneeling on a bamboo floor. No aircon, no music, just a single candle flickering, and her voice shaking, broken but steady. She prayed in Bisaya, not with eloquence, but with urgency. Her words weren't impressive, but the spirit behind them. It echoed like thunder in the realm I was standing in. I turned to the angel beside me and asked, "Who is she?" He replied, "Ate Lourdes." She fasted for 3 days. Only water. She is praying for her grandson, addicted to drugs, lost in gang life in Cebu City. Then, I saw what was happening in the spirit. Every word she spoke became light, and the light moved like a sword, slicing through dark vines that wrapped around a young man's soul. I saw the demon that had bound her grandson for 11 years scream and flee. It didn't walk away. It was torn from its place, as if every word of her prayer was tearing its roots out of the boy's soul. This was not emotional. It was surgical, and the moment she began to worship, lifting her trembling voice in an old hymn, the roof of her house opened in the spirit realm, and light descended like a waterfall. That's when I felt it, the atmosphere of heaven. The angel whispered again, "This is what fasting with prayer and worship does. It opens the heavens. It roots out evil. Not just the fruits of sin, but the root systems Satan has planted for decades." Then I remembered what Jesus said in Matthew 15:13. "Every plant that my Father has not planted will be pulled up by the roots." And suddenly, I saw what the enemy had been building. For every family, every city, every person, Satan had planted entire structures, vines of lust, towers of addiction, dungeons of shame. But fasting combined with worship. It was like a divine earthquake. Entire strongholds collapsed with a single whisper of worship. Then the Lord spoke to me again.
My child, Satan plants in silence. He waits years to harvest pain. But when my people fast and worship, I do not trim branches, I pull roots.
I wept, because I knew my family, my nation, even I had tolerated things that should have been uprooted years ago. We had settled for behavior modification instead of heart transformation. We prayed soft prayers, but never fasted for real breakthroughs. We sang songs, but never let worship be warfare. Then Jesus showed me a timeline. A man bound by pornography for 23 years, another trapped in alcoholism for 17, a girl tormented by suicidal thoughts since she was 12, all of them praying, attending church, but never fasting. Then I saw what happened when they finally fasted with intensity, not just skipping rice, but shutting themselves in a room, turning off the world, crying out with hunger for God, worshiping with cracked voices and tear-soaked pillows. The demonic forces around them began to tremble, then collapse, then disappear. This wasn't just spiritual, it was strategic. And then I heard the demons speak. One of them growled, "She's fasting again. Get out now." Another shouted, "He's worshiping, his spirit is too bright. We can't stay." That's when it hit me. The fasting that makes hell tremble is not casual. It is violent. Violent in faith. Violent in hunger. Violent in surrender. I turned to Jesus and asked, "Why don't we see this more often?" And he replied with sadness in his voice,
Because my people want deliverance without sacrifice, comfort without surrender. They sing to feel good, not to fight. I inhabit the praise of my people, and where I dwell, darkness cannot.
He paused and continued,
But if even one believer fasts with fire, prays without pretense, worships with tears, I shall shake entire generations. Free, Philippines knows how to sing. But I am calling them to fast and sing, because when their praise comes from sacrifice, I shall shake their nation.
I remembered Ate Lourdes again. No microphone, no spotlight, no theology degree, just a grandmother. Fasting, praying, singing off-key, and shaking hell's walls. And I knew the enemy fears not our fame, but our fasting, not our numbers, but our worship in secret. That's why Satan distracts us, makes us too busy, too tired, too modern. Because he knows, if even one believer awakens to this, his kingdom collapses. My name is Enzo, and I saw it with my own eyes. Now I must tell the world, especially my people in the Philippines, stop fighting demons with weak prayers. Fight with fasting. Fight with worship. Fight like Ate Lourdes. Because heaven moves when you starve your flesh and feed your spirit. After the battlefield of prayer and worship, the angel led me into what looked like an ancient prison. But this wasn't built by men. Its walls were made of regrets, its bars forged from lies whispered into souls since childhood. Inside, I saw thousands, bound not by chains, but by silence. These were not criminals. These were people who had lost their song. No voices, no melody, just echoes of who they used to be. I recognized some of them. Pastors, worship leaders, even youth from my church back in Davao. They weren't in hell. They were alive, on earth. But in the spirit, they had become prisoners of disappointment, bitterness, and despair. The angel looked at me and said, "This is the prison of silent believers, those who fast, but forget to praise." I felt sick, because I had been one of them. I had fasted for healing, for breakthrough, for results. But not once had I fasted simply to worship. Then suddenly a tremor shook the realm, like a storm approaching. In the distance, a sound, faint but growing, a melody, a voice. Someone was singing. It wasn't perfect. In fact, it was out of tune. But it was real, raw, anointed. The angel pointed. Look. There I saw a blind boy, maybe 10 or 11, kneeling alone in a dark room somewhere in Quezon City. His hands lifted, no guitar, no lights, no lyrics on screen, just his broken voice singing, "Here I am to worship, here I am to bow down." He hadn't eaten for 2 days. His family was in shambles. His eyes couldn't see, but his spirit was brighter than the sun. And then, the prison shook again. One by one, the chains in the realms started breaking. People who had been stuck in silence for years began to lift their hands, began to hum, to weep, and then to praise. Their praise wasn't loud, but it was enough. It was enough to shake the foundations of bondage. I watched as demons that had rested for years on those souls fled in terror, not because of rebukes, not because of shouting, but because of the atmosphere of worship that fasting had activated. The angel turned to me and said, "Worship is not filler during fasting, it is fire." Then Jesus came near again.
When you praise me while fasting, you are not just singing, you are building an altar. And where there is an altar, I send my fire.
Tears poured from my eyes, because now I understood why so many of our fasts feel dry. We endure them like chores, complain through them, watch the clock, wait for it to be over. But we forget that praise is the fragrance that fills the offering. In that realm, I saw another vision. A group of young adults in Taguig gathered in one room. No leader, no event. They had just decided to fast for 5 days and worship non-stop. No social media, no snacks, just worship. By the 3rd day, one of them, a girl who had struggled with same-sex attraction for 8 years, fell to her knees weeping, and a dark shadow exploded out of her chest. It screamed, "We can't survive here anymore," and disappeared into black smoke. The worship didn't stop. The room was thick with God's glory, not church glory, heavenly glory. And then I heard it again.
I inhabit the praise of my people, and where I dwell darkness cannot.
That's when I realized fasting weakens the flesh, but praise strengthens the spirit. And when your spirit becomes strong, your authority returns. I saw Paul and Silas in that ancient prison. It wasn't just a story anymore. I saw the moment they started praising at midnight, a literal spiritual earthquake was released. And not just their chains, but everyone's chains broke. And that's when the Lord said something I will never forget.
Philippines knows how to sing, but I am calling them to fast and sing, because when their praise comes from sacrifice, I shall shake their nation.
I fell on my face, ashamed of how many times I treated worship like a warm-up or a background song. But now I knew praise is not a song, it is a sword. And so I asked the Lord, "What must we do to see this again?" He answered,
Fast, and fill your fasting hours with praise. Sing when you're hungry, worship when you're weak, praise me, and I shall set the captives free.
As the vision faded, I heard one last melody, a voice that was not from this world, singing over the Philippines. And it was him, and it was beautiful. After the worship praise battlefield faded, I found myself in what looked like a city inside a brain. Glowing wires, flashing screens, thousands of interconnected pathways. It was like a living neural network pulsing with noise. But the deeper I walked into it, the more I realized this wasn't a brain. It was the soul of a generation. Screens floated in the air. TikTok, Netflix, YouTube, even Christian vlogs, and each screen had a thin black cord connected to someone's chest. They weren't being entertained. They were being drained. For every minute they watched something inside them. Hunger, faith, purity was being pulled away. I turned and saw a teenage girl from Pasig lying on her bed, phone in hand. She was watching a funny clip, laughing on the outside, but her spirit was tied to 4 different chains: comparison, shame, lust, and fear. The more she scrolled, the tighter the chains grew, and no one noticed, not even her parents in the next room praying for her, because in the visible realm, nothing looked wrong. Then the angel beside me whispered, "This is why most fasting fails, because they only fast food, but they keep feeding the flesh." I asked, "What do you mean?" He pointed at another young man, a worship drummer from Iloilo, fasting for 7 days. No rice, no meat, but still playing violent video games until 2 a.m., still gossiping in Discord chats, still watching sensual content by accident. And in the spirit, his fast had no power. The demons around him were laughing, eating popcorn, mocking, "He's starving his stomach, but not his soul." That's when the Lord appeared again.
My child, consecration is not just what you stop eating, it's what you stop feeding. You cannot starve your flesh with food and feed it with filth.
The words hit like lightning, and I knew I had done the same. I had fasted before, skipped meals, drank water, but I never shut down the noise, never unplugged from the system, never withdrew like Jesus did. I wanted results without removal. I wanted God's voice to come through the fog of TikTok and Spotify and podcasts and binge-watching, but I never made room for him. Then I saw something horrifying. A giant tree, black and thorned, growing in the middle of the spirit realm. And from it hung millions of wires connecting to houses, bedrooms, even churches. Its roots fed on distraction. Its fruit was numbness. And written on its bark, the system. I asked the angel, "What is this?" He answered, "This is the world's network. Satan's web of constant stimulation. It doesn't need to make you sin. It just needs to keep you busy." And then I heard a whisper, not evil, but full of warning.
Even I, the Son of God, withdrew from the crowds. to be alone with the Father. Why do my children think they can hear me while living in constant noise?
I fell on my knees because I realized we fear silence more than sin. We fill every second of stillness with scrolling, swiping background sound, as if silence would confront us with what we've become. Then I saw a miracle. A college student from Baguio, once addicted to anime and dark fanfics, suddenly made a radical choice. He unplugged his devices, logged out of all social apps, took a week off school, not for vacation, but for consecration. He fasted not just from food, but from comfort, from attention, from performance. He spent 10 days in prayer, silence, and scripture. On the 9th night, I saw a cloud of black spirits flee from his dorm window, and the tree that had rooted in his soul withered instantly. Heaven rejoiced, not because he preached, not because he posted, but because he disconnected from the world and reconnected with the Father.
Tell them this: if they unplug from the system, I shall download heaven. If they sacrifice noise, I shall whisper secrets.
And then he showed me something even more haunting. I saw many believers fasting correctly, even sincerely, but still yoked to toxic relationships. They would fast for 21 days, but spend time with people who mocked holiness, dated partners who drew them back into sin, followed influencers who glorified compromise, and in the spirit, they looked like birds trying to fly with weights tied to their feet.
They want my power, while sleeping next to the enemy.
I wept, not in guilt, but in repentance, because consecration fasting is not punishment. It is preparation. It is making room. It is spiritual detox. It is telling God, I want you more than I want to feel good. And so I said, Lord, how do we begin? He answered with piercing clarity.
Start small, but start. Turn off the screen. Close the chat. Delete the app. Fast from comfort, and you will find me in the quiet.
Then I heard the verse I had forgotten long ago. Isaiah 30:15. In returning and rest you shall be saved. In quietness and trust shall be your strength. And as that truth burned in me, I knew Philippines does not need more noise. We need consecration. We need silence that speaks. We need holiness that heals. So I say this to you, my kapatid. If your fasting feels powerless, maybe it's not because you're doing it wrong. Maybe you're not unplugging deep enough. I didn't think it could get any darker. But then the angel brought me to a hallway of locked doors. It looked like a hospital corridor, but the lights were flickering, and behind each door I heard muffled cries, banging, even whispers that sounded like secrets. I asked, "Where are we?" He answered, "This is the place of hidden warfare, the strongholds behind the scenes, and few ever dare to ask for the key." The hallway stretched endlessly. Every door had a name, not of a person, but of a situation. Depression, divorce, barrenness, ministry failure, witchcraft, chronic sickness. I froze when I saw a door marked with my name, Enzo. Delay. Suddenly, I remembered how many times I had prayed, fasted, believed for open doors, but things still fell apart. Opportunities vanished, dreams delayed, and deep down I thought, maybe God forgot me. But as I stood before that door, the angel spoke. Behind this delay is a battle you never saw, and the reason you didn't see it is because you never fasted to ask. Then he pointed to another figure, a woman kneeling outside her own door marked miscarriage. Her name was Ate Jan. I remembered her, a midwife from Bukidnon, who served in medical missions with us. She had lost 3 children, and now she was fasting not for a baby, but for understanding, for revelation. And that's when I saw it. In the spirit realm, there was a dark creature, ancient, covered in cloaks, standing behind her door, holding documents with her family history, including bloodline curses, hidden sins from generations ago, vows spoken over her womb she never even knew about. No prayer had removed it, no intercessor could see it, but her fasting was making the paper burn. Then I heard a voice.
When my children fast to see, I do not hide. I reveal, I unveil what was planted in darkness, and bring it to the light.
Suddenly, her door burst open, and the creature screamed, disintegrating into ash. She stood up, weeping, not because she was pregnant, but because she finally understood. And understanding brought freedom. That's when it hit me. Revelatory fasting is not about asking God for things. It's asking God to show you what you've been blind to. And that scares the enemy more than anything, because the only reason darkness thrives is because we never see it. The angel showed me another vision, this one of a man in Manila crying over financial ruin. He blamed God. He thought he was cursed. But during a 7-day revelatory fast, God opened his eyes and showed him the real root, a friendship with a business partner who had been stealing behind his back for years and praying rituals against him out of jealousy. He confronted the man. The mask came off. Betrayal exposed. And from that day on, his finances healed, not because of more money, but because the leak had been found. And Jesus said,
My people perish for lack of knowledge, but if they would fast to see, I would show them what the enemy fears I will reveal.
Then he brought me to the book of Daniel. But it wasn't on a page, it was a living scene. I saw Daniel fasting 21 days, not for a promotion, not for success, but for understanding. And then I saw the battle, angels fighting above Persia, the enemy trying to delay the answer, and I understood revelation comes at a cost, but it always comes. Then I saw my own life, and I broke. Because there were things I had asked for, doors that didn't open, relationships that ended, and instead of fasting for insight, I had complained, I had doubted, I had assumed. But now I saw some delays are divine, some battles are hidden, and some chains can only be broken when we fast not to receive, but to perceive. I asked, Lord, what are you trying to show us? And he replied,
The enemy has strategies. He studies bloodlines. He plants things in childhood. He hides curses in culture. But when my people fast to see, I will reveal every trap.
Then he added,
Tell them this. The spiritual roots of natural pain are not found by accident. They are uncovered through fasting that seeks me not my gifts, but my light.
In that moment, a blinding light shone across the hallway. All the doors opened. Secrets burst into the open. Some were painful, others redemptive, but every single one set a soul free. And I knew the Philippines needs this, because we are a people with strong emotions, but often weak discernment. We cry, we worship, but we don't ask Lord what's really going on. So I tell you now, kapatid, fast, but fast to see. Ask God to open your eyes. Ask Him to show you the roots, not just the fruit, because once you see, you cannot unsee. And once the truth is exposed, the lie loses its power. After all that I had seen, the earthquakes of praise, the destruction of demonic systems, the fire that fell in consecration, the unveiling of spiritual secrets, you'd think I was ready to fast like never before. You'd think I would return to my body, rise from that hospital bed, and enter a 40-day fast with fire in my bones. But no one warned me what came next. Before I could return, before I could even finish the final vision, I felt something shift in the spirit. It was as if the realm itself began to grow heavier, like gravity had increased tenfold. My spirit was still in God's presence, but something was trying to pull me back down. Suddenly I heard a growl, not from one demon, but from a legion. Whispers, taunts, lies all at once. You think they'll listen to you. You're still weak. What good is fasting if no one changes? You don't even fast consistently. You're just Enzo, just a man. And then came the physical pain. Not in the spirit, but in my body. I could feel it. The chest pressure again. nausea, dizziness, even cold sweat. And I hadn't even returned yet. The angel stood beside me but did not speak, because this was a test I had to pass. Then I remembered what so many believers feel when they start to fast: the unbearable hunger on the very first hour, the headache, even though they didn't skip coffee yet, the sudden invite to a birthday, with lechon kare-kare sinigang and all your favorites, the text from your crush after months of silence, the emotional breakdowns you didn't expect, the mental fog, the emotional dips, the attack of "what's the point?" I was living it in the spirit, and I saw thousands around the world, young Filipinos, old pastors, quiet housewives, all trying to start their fasts. And every single one of them got hit immediately. But here's the part that shook me. The moment they thought it was just hunger, the enemy gained ground, because they believed the lie. This is just physical. But no, kapatid. It's not just physical. It's spiritual resistance. It's proof that your fasting is working. The enemy does not waste his weapons on things that don't threaten him. And fasting, real fasting, is nuclear to his realm. Then I heard the Lord speak again, and this time it was like a roar and a whisper combined.
When you begin to fast, hell begins to tremble, and when you feel the pushback. Know this, you have struck a nerve.
I collapsed, not in defeat, but in awareness. Everything made sense now. Why people get discouraged on day one. Why sleepiness, laziness, and doubt feel stronger than usual. Why people start and stop. It's not coincidence. It's counterattack. Then I saw a girl in Laguna, just 16 years old, who decided to fast for the first time. She shut off her phone, skipped breakfast, and spent 30 minutes in silence with her Bible. But then her head hurt. Her friends sent gossip. Her parents fought, and she cried, saying, "Maybe I'm not ready. Maybe fasting's not for me." But in the spirit, the demon assigned to her was screaming. Chains had cracked. Territory was being shaken. And he whispered desperately to others, "Make her stop. Distract her. Lie to her. Make her eat. Just don't let her continue." That's when I understood. Satan doesn't fear that you'll fail your fast. He fears that you'll finish it. So I asked Jesus, "Lord, what should we do when the pressure hits? When we feel weak?" And he answered,
Endure. For every minute you persist, the enemy loses power. The hunger is temporary, but the breakthrough is eternal.
Then he added,
When you feel the most empty, I am the closest. When you feel too tired to pray, just whisper my name. I will fight while you breathe.
I wanted to worship, but all I could do was whisper, "Jesus." And instantly, like wind through dry leaves, the heaviness lifted. I wasn't strong, but I was surrendered. And sometimes surrender is all God needs to win the battle. So to everyone watching, everyone who's ever failed a fast, felt discouraged, or thought they were too weak, I speak this over you now. You are not failing. You are fighting. Every time you say no to your flesh, every time you push through the headache, every time you sing when you feel dry, you are destroying a kingdom you cannot see. So don't stop.
Tell them this. The war is not over food. The war is over focus. If they will endure, I will deliver.
And I knew the enemy wasn't afraid of my strength. He was afraid of my consistency. After the storms, the prisons, the whispers, and the weight, I was suddenly somewhere else. There was no battle here, no shadow, no noise. Just light, a light so pure it had color, depth, weight. But it didn't blind. It healed. The air itself vibrated with peace, and something I couldn't explain, belonging. As if I had just returned to a place I was created for, but had forgotten. I stood there, or floated, I couldn't tell, completely exposed. There was no skin, no clothes, no body, just my soul. And everything was visible. My fears, my regrets, my arrogance, my hidden sins. I expected wrath, fire, thunder. But what came broke me completely. He stepped out from the center of the light, and I knew immediately it was him. I had never seen his face on earth, but somehow every cell of my being recognized his presence. It was Jesus, but not the quiet portrait from the church wall. No, this was the glorious, risen, eternal King eyes, like fire voice, like living water, yet a love in his gaze that crushed my shame without a word. I fell on my face. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was overwhelmed by the weight of my own brokenness. But then, he touched my shoulder, and everything inside me stilled.
Enzo, look at me.
I couldn't, but his hand lifted my chin.
I did not bring you here to condemn you. I brought you here to restore you.
Tears poured from my spirit. Not my eyes, I didn't have a body anymore, but from the center of my being. I whispered, Lord, I don't deserve to go back. I failed you so many times. He smiled.
I know, and I still chose you.
I broke. All the walls I had built, the professionalism, the pride, the distance melted like wax in a furnace, because in that moment I realized he didn't need me to perform. He just wanted me to return. He began to walk with me through the light, and with every step, memories returned. He showed me moments I had forgotten, the time I led my younger brother in a prayer of salvation at 11 years old, the first time I cried during worship at summer camp, the dream I had at 16 where I saw myself preaching barefoot to street kids in Cebu. He showed me the calling I had buried under career ambition and convenience.
You were never meant to heal just bodies. I called you to heal nations.
Then he paused.
But you cannot lead others to freedom until you are free.
I fell to my knees again. Lord, what do I do? How do I go back? I feel so unworthy. And he knelt with me. The King of Glory knelt beside me.
Fast. Teach them to fast, not religiously, but redemptively. Teach them to fast with purpose, with worship, with consecration, with hunger for truth. And I will shake the foundations of your nation.
His words echoed like rivers of fire and oil, burning yet soothing.
Tell them, I am not far, but they have filled their lives with too much noise to hear me. I wait in the quiet. I speak in the fasting.
Then he looked into me through me and said one more thing.
Enzo, return to them. And when you speak, speak with fire. Speak what I showed you. Warn them. Love them. And if they listen, I will pour out my spirit on the Philippines like never before.
Suddenly, I saw flashes, not visions, but real future events. Youth kneeling in muddy fields, fasting and worshiping through the rain. Old women praying in tongues on mountaintops, shaking entire barangays into revival. Families unplugging televisions and turning their living rooms into altars. Government leaders crying in secret fasting chambers, trembling under conviction. Churches breaking down walls between denominations. To fast and weep together. I saw fire. I saw tears. I saw deliverance. But it all began with fasting. Then the Lord reached toward my chest and touched my spirit, and I felt myself being pulled downward again. But this time, not into darkness. Back into my body, back to earth, back to purpose. And as I faded from the light, I heard his voice one last time.
Go, son, they are waiting.
When I woke up, my ears were ringing. Not from noise, but from silence. The kind of silence that only comes after something holy has passed through. The nurses were surrounding me, confused, trembling. The monitor had flatlined for 7 minutes. They said I was gone. No pulse, no breath. But I came back, not just to live, but to speak. The first thing I whispered was, he's coming. The second, Philippines must fast. It's been months since that day in Aleppo. I no longer work full-time as a surgeon. I left the OR to step into a greater battlefield, the one for the souls of a nation. You see, I thought this message was just for me, but it's not. It's for you. Yes, you, the one watching this video on your lunch break. The college student binge-watching sermons, but never praying. The mom who used to sing in church, but now cries alone in her kitchen. The pastor who's grown tired of carrying everything. The teenager in love with worship music, but secretly bound in sin. The atheist scrolling in curiosity. This is for you, because what I saw on the other side wasn't just a warning. It was a window, and through that window, I saw what will happen if we stay asleep. I saw churches full of people, but empty of glory. I saw children growing up in Christian homes, yet lost to anxiety, identity, confusion, and spiritual blindness. I saw influencers preaching self-love, while demons whispered in their ears. I saw a Philippines that looked prosperous, but was spiritually bankrupt. And I saw fire, not revival fire, but judgment fire, waiting behind a wall of mercy, a wall that is thinning. But then, I saw what could happen if we turn, if we fast, not just out of tradition, not to lose weight, not to impress, not to earn anything, but because we're desperate, because we're done with shallow faith, because we're ready for holy war. And I saw
families fasting together, barangays turning off electricity for 24 hours to seek God, churches locking the doors not for services but for intercession, youth replacing clubs with prayer rooms, influencers deleting their platforms to protect their purity, old men weeping on street corners because the presence of God became too strong to ignore.
And over all of this, I heard his voice one last time.
If my people, the ones who still call me Lord, will humble themselves fast and seek me, I shall heal their land.
So here's what I leave you with, kapatid. This is not just a video. This is a calling. And I don't care if this gets 10 views or 10 million. I did not return from death to entertain you. I came back to remind you. Hell fears fasting, not because of the hunger, but because of what happens when your hunger is no longer for food, but for God. So rise up. Start small. Miss one meal. Miss one show. Miss one scroll session. Replace it with worship. Replace it with silence. Replace it with the word. Then grow deeper. Because I promise you, and I say this as a witness who stood between death and eternity.
Every fast done in secret, I see, and what I see in secret, I will reward with power.
Philippines, this is our time, not for war in the streets, but for war in the spirit. Let fasting become our weapon. Let holiness become our language. Let worship become our cry. And let Jesus become real again, because he is near, and he is waiting.